Hi BookTube! I'm here today with my January wrap-up. I'm a little low energy, so just apologies for that, but I just wanted to get this filmed and done with. But hopefully get some videos up that aren't just Friday reads this month. Okay, so let's dive right into it. I read 9.5-ish, kind of like 2.5-ish. Like 2 halves of a book, but 2 halves of different books, if that makes sense. I'm just gonna say 9.5 with that 1 half I intend on finishing. The other half was a DNF. Anyways, let's just get DNFs out of the way because I am now keeping track of DNFs and thought I would share them. I have my handy dandy book journal here, just that's what I'm referencing. And so we have my January page all decorated with weird, I don't even know what kind of animal that is. What kind of animal that is? Some kind of dog thing. Anyways, so what did I DNF? First one on the list is Amazing Adventures of Jules, Volume 1. And I silly didn't write authors anywhere, so apologies for that too, but I'll put the pictures on the screen probably here to cover the fact that I have a pair of socks right there. Anyways, so Amazing Adventures of Jules was a comic. And I DNF'd it because it got really racist. Like, there were just a few images at the beginning where there was a black person with, like, really kind of stereotyped kind of blackface, and I was just like, ooh, you know, that's not good. But I read a few more pages, and then they were talking about a Japanese pilot getting his eyes widened so he could see better, and I was just like, at that point, I was just like, oh boy. Like, I'm not going there with this comic. Yeah, it was supposed to be about a little boy going off to space, and instead we get all this really racist stuff going on. And then another book I DNF'd is Beauty is a Wound, and that was my audiobook. And I initially loved that book. The narrative structure was really cool. It was non-linear, and you jump back and forth in time, and sometimes you start at like the end of a person's story, or where they were in the current frame of the previous person's story, and then go backwards and learn more about them. And it was so cool, but there were 2 problems with it. It eventually got to be repetitive, in that, you know, a lot of the same things kept happening, and one of the same things that kept happening was rape. There's one part where a male and female character were interacting, and I'm just like, okay, let's count down to when the rape's gonna happen, and yeah, it was leading up to it, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, this is just, it seems like it was just a fantasy for the author to rape a bunch of women repeatedly, and many graphic descriptions. So yeah, that was a DNF. I also, this is a soft DNF, and that was the Just City, and that was a soft DNF because I forgot I was reading it. And I thought at that point, is nearing the end of the month, and I thought, well, if I forgot that I was even reading this thing, I think I got 20 pages in, then, you know, it's probably not going to be a great book. So I just, you know, there wasn't any problems with it, it was just, I kept forgetting I was reading it. So it got put to the side. I might go back to it later, but at this point, no. I lost my page. Let's see if there's, I don't think there were any other DNFs, but there was another book that I did not finish this month, but that's, I'm going to continue it into February, and that is The Grey House, which is the audiobook I chose to replace Beauty is a Wound, and I am in love with the atmosphere of this book. This is, it's a Russian book. It won a bunch of awards. And it's about a group of, well, initially it was just boys, but now I'm like 50% of the way through, and she just introduced a group of girls. But we're in a boarding school for young teens. I think the youngest is about 11 and the oldest are 18, 19. Students who have physical disabilities. And a wide range of them. And as far as I know, I work with people with physical disabilities, but I don't have a physical disability, but I think I'm an okay judge at that, and the representation is just fine. Like, it's great. Yeah, and there's no plot to this book whatsoever. You kind of follow like similar characters, but like there's no overarching plot going on, and it keeps introducing all these so cool concepts. It's like, I described it as a mixture of like fairy tales meet like Edgar Allan Poe with that kind of little bit of dread and darkness going on in the background, meets like the 1980s films like The Goonies, even Stand By Me. What was the other one? The Lost Boys. Like, there's this really kind of whimsy, but also this kind of dread at the same time. And this book is amazing. I actually already bought a physical copy. I know I said I was going on a book buying ban, but that was for books to add to my TBR, and this is a book that I know I'm going to reread next year, if not sooner, because it is amazing. It's also over 700 pages long, and the audiobook, I'm currently probably about 50% through now. So I'm going to stop on the 1st of February, and I'm going to listen to my audiobook for February. It's only 7 hours long, so that may take me a week or two, and then I'll go back to the Grey House, and I'm going to do that until I finish it, because I'm really enjoying the atmosphere of this book. Okay, books that I did finish now, finally. So, Indian Horse by Richard Wiggumese. I remember that author's name. This was a really good book. It was the first book I finished this year, I believe. And it's about a young boy in the 1960s, I believe, and a young Ojibwe boy and his experience in residential schools. So we begin with his family trying to evade the Indian agents trying to capture their son to bring him to schools because it was mandatory. His experiences in school, and then his discovery of hockey, and how that helped and then didn't help him, because he got the chance to play not officially in the NHL, but in like a high ranking hockey league, and just the racism that was faced. He couldn't just be, I can't remember the character's name, he couldn't just be himself. He was always the Indian. He couldn't escape that in hockey anymore. Yeah, it's a really good book. Really good book. I also finished George and Rue by George Eliot Clark. I remember that name too. And this is about two brothers in Halifax, Nova Scotia, anyways. And they, in New Brunswick. They're both there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So this is about two brothers who are black men in Canada, and they're real people, and they murdered a taxi driver. And this is kind of like their story, literally right from birth. The opening scene is their mother giving birth to one of them, and up to their death, because it's no spoiler because it's a historical fiction, and it tells you right on the back that they get charged and hung for this crime. So it's a really, really interesting exploration of 1930s to I believe they were hanged in 1949. Exploration of that period in Canada. Editing Courtney here. I just wanted to comment on the writing in this book. I neglected to do that, unfortunately. It is so beautiful. It is told in dialect, but he uses it in such a descriptive way that it is so captivating when he is describing scenes. I highly recommend picking it up just for that reason. Really cool. I highly recommend it. Saving Jesus from the Church. I'm filming this a few days early, and I have 20 pages left, but man, this book is a call to action. That's how I'm describing it. It is saying, stop just calling yourself a Christian and start being a follower of Jesus. It's very much about using historical analysis of the text and what that actually means, but going further than that, and not just talking about it in this philosophical, you know, meta sense, but in like actually do this stuff. You know, actually do what Jesus asks you to do. Yeah, it's really, really good. I'll probably do a fuller review on that at some point. Oh, Vernals Inquest, that's another one I didn't finish and I forgot to talk about. Mostly because it's really daunting. I actually have it here and I'm going to show you a page and read from that page. So I'll just take a picture of it. I'm just going to open it to the beginning of chapter 3, I believe, which is about Lucia. I'm just going to start that one from the beginning. Lucia Joyce, daughter of James Joyce, in an insane asylum. So I'll post a picture either here or here of the actual text. Okay, I'll just read this section. Outside, she stuns and takes it in. From the cerulean skullbowl of the firmament above to the sage curtain of the far horizon. You're the flare beds close at hand, with all their petal sparks and flare work, sprays of color. Though it's not ideal, she likes displace. The best of all she's been. She enjoys the Hanson dictors with their bedside manner, and then roughly 4 o'clock, she often lingers at the gates to watch the jesting schoolboys from the grammar school that stems adjacent to her psychiatric institution. It's pretty as a picture. They go scruffling down the bowling road beyond the iron railings, snatching up each other's badgered caps and grubbing at each other's balls with wild hilarity. Oblivious to her spying from the foliage in wistful privately. Yeah, you can see how hard that is to read, and so I just kept hitting it off and pitting it off and pitting it off. So I will be finishing that hopefully in February. Another book I finished is my reread, Can You Hear the Nightbird Call? And by God, Anita Rabadami, she takes a fork, jabs it into your heart, and then just when you think you are in so much pain, what she does is she takes it and she twists it and she yanks your heart right out. She puts it on the page and like gives it to you. That's like, oh, it's relentless, the trauma at the end especially, but it ends on this little glimmer of hope. It's just, whew. That is about, well, it starts off with just before the partition of India into India and Pakistan, and we follow a family in India and 2 families who have immigrated from India to Canada, and talks about a lot about the Sikh uprising as well, the Golden Temple Massacre, and Air Flight India 182, and just, oh my gosh, the story she weaves around it is just so beautiful and heart-wrenching and real, and one of my favorite books of all time, and this reread just instilled that again. I also read 117 Days by Ruth First. I am remembering authors' names. This is really weird. And that's a real life kind of memoir about Ruth First. In South Africa, she was fighting against apartheid, and a rule was made at the time that people suspected of communism, was the way it was phrased, could be picked up without evidence, without being charged, and jailed for 90 days. And as soon as they were released, they could be picked up again. Like literally the lady stepped out onto the street and the cops came out and arrested her again for, well, she got out after 117 days, but they could keep them, you know, in that cycle for as long as they felt they needed to kind of get information and evidence against other people, if not the person they had arrested themselves. And Ruth First went through this. It was a really interesting look at South Africa at the time. I also read World War Z, and that was interesting. I didn't think it was scary while I was reading it, but then the thoughts of zombies, you just have to say that word, and the insinuation is there for me. But that was an interesting book. I really liked the way it was formatted, the way it built that world by talking to different people and their different experiences. It was mostly military, and I think the only thing I really would have changed was that I would have liked more civilian perspectives. But I get, like, it's titled World War Z, so it's taking it from a military perspective. Yeah, it's about the war against zombies. What can we say? I also read The First Sister by Lyndon A. Lewis. There's another name I remembered. And that was a really interesting science fiction. It's a debut. And I'm actually looking forward to the sequel to this. And it's, again, we follow 3 different perspectives. And in this world we have 2 different planets, or 2 different sides. Earth has taken over some of the other planets on Earth, and they're at war. And we follow a woman who is called on the cover a comfort woman. She's part of this religious order that provides soldiers of any sexual orientation or gender, provides them a place to confess and a place to seek sexual pleasure. And then we follow, she's called the First Sister, and then we follow a soldier on the other side and his partner who's a traitor. And then we, discover more about the world. It was a really interesting world to be in, for sure. I also finished Attack Surface by Cory Doctorow. I don't know if you pronounce it Cory Doctorow or Doctorow, if the W's pronounced as a V or an F sound. Anywho, anyways, that is a really interesting book. That actually gave me nightmares. And then I read an article about this actually happening. So it's about this girl, Masha. Look, I remembered the character name. And she is, she works in surveillance. So she, like, not just CCTVs, but like infiltrating phones and tech and everything to spy on people. And she kind of works for the bad guys, and her conscience kind of gets at her. So she also kind of tells the good guys how to evade the surveillance of the bad guys. The bad guys being, like big government and dictators and the police even. And it's all about, what can you do as a person? Not just even if you are working for the bad side, but as just a normal person, like, what is there to do? Is it hopeless to not fight against social justice, or should we do it despite the fact that the odds never seem in our favor? It was a really good book with a lot of really interesting themes. My only criticism is that he does talk about being a white savior at one point, and because Masha's best friend is black and she's part of the Black Lives Matter movement, but I don't think he refers to that directly. He calls it something else because it's a fictional world. And she says at one point, like, no, I don't want your help because you're white and, we need to figure this out. But then it works out that she does end up being kind of like the person that helps anyway. So there's kind of an issue with white savior, but he acknowledges it at the same time. But that's a whole other video. I'm already talking for too long here. My graphic novel of the month was Rose, and this is the last book. And that was the prequel for the Bones series. Oh, you can't see it on the shelf there. It's behind here now. And it was interesting. I think you can miss it. I didn't really feel like it added anything to the story. It's the grandmother story. And yeah, I felt like it was a little all over the place here and there, to be honest. But the Bone graphic novel series, go out and read it. It is so good. It is, like, if you're looking to get into graphic novels, I think it's a great beginning place. It's a wonderful fantasy story for all ages. Yeah, I'm going to stop talking now. I apologize for the length of this video and for my rambling and unpreparedness, but I wanted to get this filmed and done so that it can go up. That's it. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you read this month, and have a great February.